Hello everybody, welcome back to Book of Kings, where we discuss topics such as history, religion, philosophy, psychology, culture, and more, and the way that they all interact with one another. Don't forget to like, leave a comment, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to receive a notification every time I release a new video. Hope you enjoy. Hello everybody, we are back for another video. So the topic of today's video is going to be a topic that has become quite a popular topic on this channel, and that is the topic of the Eurasian Steppe. So I did a previous video series covering the general history of the Eurasian Steppe, and I highly encourage you to check out that series if you'd like to have a little bit more background knowledge and context regarding this region. However, with today's video, I'm going to talk about one specific event which occurred in the Eurasian Steppe and would then proceed to set in motion a chain reaction of subsequent events which would spread all across the Eurasian Steppe, beginning in the eastern portion of the Eurasian Steppe, what is today Mongolia, and spreading almost through sort of a domino effect all the way to the other end of the Eurasian Steppe. So our story today begins with the fall of a particular empire, and that is the Turkic Khanate or Gokturk Khanate. So the Gokturk Khanate is famous for being the first empire to unite nearly the entire Eurasian Steppe, from the eastern Eurasian Steppe in Mongolia and northeastern China, all the way to the western Eurasian Steppe in what is modern-day Ukraine. Now, throughout the course of this empire, there would be some highs and lows, and there would be some fortunate and unfortunate events which would befall the Gokturk Khanate prior to its ultimate demise. But of course, prior to its ultimate demise, one of these misfortunate events would be the loss of its western territories. Pretty much all the territories west of what is today Mongolia. So the loss of the territories in Central Asia, parts of Russia, and Ukraine. And with the loss of these territories, we would see various other smaller states emerge within these territories, beginning from east to west, namely being the Turgesh Khanate, the Kangar Union, and the Khazar Khanate. So, setting the scene for where our story begins, we had the Gokturk Khanate in the eastern Eurasian Steppe, what is today Mongolia, kind of on its last limbs, so to speak. And then we have these various other smaller states which dominated the western regions of the Eurasian Steppe. Now let us begin our story, this first event which would set off this chain reaction and domino effect of subsequent events. And that is, as I mentioned, the fall of the Gokturk Khanate. So the Gokturk Khanate in its last limbs was ultimately defeated by an alliance of three other Turkic tribes or Turkic peoples. And that was an alliance of the Basmils, the Karluks, and the Uyghurs. All, as I mentioned, Turkic peoples. So the Gokturk Khanate would be defeated and destroyed by the alliance of these three tribes. Now, in the aftermath and wreckage of the demise of this Khanate, these three Turkic peoples would then proceed to compete and battle with one another for supremacy of this fallen Khanate. And being that we had three different tribes, three different Turkic peoples, with that being an odd number, we would ultimately have two of them unite against the one odd man out. And that odd man out would be the Basmils. So we would have the Uyghurs and the Karluks unite together against the Basmils. Now, if we're just going to do a little basic math here, I wonder who won. I think it was the alliance of the Karluks and the Uyghurs. So of course, they would defeat the Basmils, and from this point on, the Basmils would cease to play a significant role in the history of the region. So now you have the Karluks and the Uyghurs, now with their common enemy gone. Now, of course, naturally, as the saying goes, your enemy's enemy is your friend. Well, now with that enemy gone, these two friends are not necessarily friends anymore. So now the Karluks and the Uyghurs proceed to battle with one another for control of what was left of this destroyed Khanate. And ultimately in this battle between the Karluks and the Uyghurs would come out victorious. Now ultimately, due to hostilities with the victorious Uyghurs, the Karluks would then be forced out of the territory of the Uyghur Khanate, what is today Mongolia, and would resettle into the territory of what was the Turgesh Khanate. The Karluks would of course then defeat the Turgesh and conquer their Khanate and establish their own state in place of it. That was the Karluk Yabgu state. Yabgu could be said to be equivalent to a prince, so they would establish what could be viewed as their own principality. So now the Karluks have their own state corresponding to what was previously the Turgesh Khanate. Now, shortly after this, the Karluks would ultimately come into conflict with another Turkic group inhabiting this region, and those were the Oghuz Turks. And the Karluks would ultimately come out victorious and defeat the Oghuz Turks, therefore pushing them westward towards the territory of the Kangar Union. The Oghuz Turks would then ultimately defeat the Kangar Union, conquer them, and establish their own state, the Oghuz Yabgu state, the Oghuz Principality, if you want to refer to it as such. And then, of course, ultimately, the Oghuz Turks would drive out the Kangars, who would, from this point on in history, be known as the Pechenegs. Now, the Pechenegs, having been pushed out of their territory, would then be pushed into the territory of the Khazar Khanate and override much of the Khazar Khanate, setting up their own Pecheneg Khanates. Now, it should be noted that the Khazar Khanate was a multi-ethnic state. It was populated by various different peoples, such as the ruling Turkic peoples, but it was also populated by other peoples, such as native Uralic-speaking peoples, one of which were the Magyars. Now, through the conquest of these various parts of the territory of the Khazar Khanate by the Pechenegs, the Magyar people were driven out and into the Pannonian Basin or Carpathian Basin, which corresponds to modern-day Hungary. And they, of course, would then conquer this territory and would then form the foundation of the modern Hungarian nation. And it should be noted that the modern native word for the Hungarian people and the Hungarian language is Magyar. So, this is, of course, where our story ends. The western edge of the Eurasian steppe, the conquest of the Pannonian Basin by the Magyars, which was set in motion by the conquest of the Khazar Khanate and adjacent regions by the Pechenegs, which was set in motion by the conquest of the Kangar Union by the Oghuz Turks, which was set in motion by the conquest of the Turgesh Khanate by the Karluks, which was set in motion by the defeat of the Karluks by the Uyghurs, which was set in motion by the defeat of the Basmils by an alliance of the Karluks and Uyghurs, which was ultimately all set in motion by the defeat and destruction of the Gokturk Khanate by an alliance of the Basmils, Karluks, and Uyghurs. So, there you have it. One event which took place at the easternmost regions of the Eurasian steppe set in motion a chain reaction which extended all across the Eurasian steppe and ended in its westernmost region. So, there you go. Hope you enjoyed. Talk to you next time. Thank you for watching. This has been another Book of Kings video. Don't forget to like, leave a comment, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to receive a notification every time I release a new video.